Zadon Electro Ninja here, and welcome back to Electro Ninja's Lab. In today's video, we are going to be discussing the latest episode of My Hero Academia, Season 5, Episode 90, aka the second episode of Season 5, and yes, every single episode is numbered from the very beginning for My Hero Academia, so yeah, that's why it's Episode 90. But anyways, guys, let's actually start talking about this episode. Now, the first thing to note about this episode is just the fact that this is a bit of a weird episode. Honestly, it's not necessarily adding too much, but it does add a little bit more context into certain scenes and actually makes you think a bit more. This episode takes the stuff from the very beginning of Volume 21, and basically takes the moments from when the battle with the Nomu ends, which starts the battle with Dabi, which is actually a lot shorter than I was expecting. I kind of forgot that that battle was a lot shorter than it felt like, because there was so much context in there that it was honestly a bit insane. The rest of the episode mostly focuses on the main characters dealing with a lot of the the Todoroki family dealing with a lot of the chaos that has happened. The fact is that they are in a rough spot, and things are only going to get worse slash better. But the point is that the seeds are there for improvement, to have their family be reunited. And I think that that's the important thing to actually understand here. Endeavor is not a good hero, or a good father in any sense of the term, but he is trying to get better, and I think that that's an important aspect to understand here. This is the point where he starts to improve. And honestly, he doesn't get to good father status, even currently in the manga. He's not yet there, but he's getting a lot closer, and his family is at least now willing to talk to him in the manga, but obviously things need to be improved. This is the start of it. The Endeavor Agency arc is one of the best arcs in the series because of the fact that it actually gets to talk about all of this stuff that happens right at this moment. So, seeing that actually play out is actually really awesome. And honestly, I wish that there was more to talk about, because this episode actually feels a lot shorter than it actually is. Because like I said, there's a lot of discussion and a lot of things like that, with the last few minutes being that of the name of the episode, Vestiges, which I was kind of expecting because of how just the fact that they actually showed that in the preview. I was actually expecting a little bit more for them to actually talk more about the Vestiges, to have that be a more major part of the episode, but it actually isn't, which makes some sense because of the fact that that was actually a very small portion of the episode in general. So, or part of the chapter in general. It still gets to go over a lot of the information, and actually brings up an interesting point. At this point, the quirks are called metahuman abilities, or meta abilities. Basically, things to say that they're meta, which is a word that is often used in things like DC and Marvel to basically represent that these are superpowers. Which actually leads me to actually think about that. It actually shows how much things have actually changed. Meta powers are often seen as being vile, evil, and all of these things, except for those who have them, and they consider them to be a good thing for some of them. There's really big problems and issues that go into the whole meta abilities conversation. But it does bring up an interesting factor, and that is that nowadays these powers are called quirks. And it actually makes a lot of sense because they're quirky, they're weird, but they're not bad. That is the factor that is important to realize here. Time reveals all. People change. Opinions change on what exactly is going on with these powers. Are they good? Are they bad? No, they are just powers. And that is why these powers became known as quirks. Rather than going into meta, it's no longer thinking, oh, these are powers that should not be used. These are evil powers. It's more of, oh, you just have them. It's just something that's different about you. It's not a bad thing. And I honestly think that that's kind of interesting, to say the least. I mean, I didn't really think about it too much before, because most of the times that they talk about meta is actually in the next arc with the the meta-human liberation thing. Oh my gosh, that name is so bad, but yeah, the meta-human liberation front, I believe is its name. But it's like, why such a long name? League of Villains, simple, quick, easy to remember. But then there's the meta-human liberation front, which, oh boy. And that's like I said, that's where a lot of the terms of meta is actually talked about. But it actually makes sense that a lot of these people, especially back then, would actually be considering these powers to not be quirks, but instead for them to be meta powers. Powers that shouldn't be used and all of this jazz because they're weird. No one likes them. But over time, they've just become quirks. Just saying. It's an interesting factor. Now, obviously, there are still some differences between the anime and the manga, but it's so minor that it's basically unnoticeable. Most of the differences are actually at the very beginning because of the way that they actually decide to work around this whole situation. Rather than focusing on all of the due to the way that they actually organized the episode, where they actually had the first episode be the introduction to the entire class, which it does make sense, but because of the fact that they had that, they instead were able to focus more on the new characters and stuff like that, and to really deal with introducing the characters last time. But this time, because of the way that they did that, they had to put him in the hospital and have the actual fight with Dabi be something that's just in the back of his mind. It's stuck in there, and he's trying to figure out what exactly is going on. Why is Dabi doing this stuff? And it's actually really interesting. We honestly already knew that this kind of thing would be on his mind. This whole battle was on his mind. But this actually cements the fact that he's thinking about this. Why exactly did Dabi show up? What exactly are they planning? And yes, I'm not overly fond of the jumping back and forth between the two groups and stuff, and oh boy. The thing is that I think that this episode would be a lot better for someone who doesn't know things, but also, here's another factor. They really didn't do that great. Instead of starting off by introducing Dabi going up to... I think that it's better in the manga, where Hawks goes up to Dabi, kind of mysteriously, but then he's actually acting like he's on their side. And they actually reveal... basically, that is at the end of a chapter. But by having him go up to Dabi, and then immediately they're also going over all of the stuff that has been happening with the factor that he is actually been working for the Kira Society and basically doing some spy work, it's not as interesting in my opinion. I think that ending an episode with that whole he's walking up to Dabi, maybe he's smiling a bit, would have been more interesting. Instead of having him walking up to Dabi while also we're dealing with all of this other chaos. I don't know. That's just my opinion, and you can do with it how you will, but I think that they could have done things slightly better. It's not a huge deal, like I said. Now, finally, let's talk a little bit about the Vestiges. I have talked briefly about what exactly the other quirks are. Mostly it's manga-based stuff, but now that we're actually entering this situation, I think it's time that I briefly go over all of the quirks that are going to be in this whole set. Currently, there are only 3 quirks that have actually been 100% confirmed. These being Danganronpa's Black Whip, which is the first quirk that Deku uses and will be used in this arc. The next one is Nanashimura's Float. And then the third one, and I always forget who his name is, but you can call him Thunderbolt. He has the quirk of basically being able to sense danger, which is basically a spider sense. Let's just be honest here. It's a spider sense. Or some people call it in the freaking Marvel. Why did you call it the Peter Tingle? That makes no sense. Sorry, that it's weird, but it makes some sense. But yeah, it's the Spidey sense, which is honestly a really cool moment. Getting to see all of that chaos happening, it's just a lot of fun. So look forward to seeing those powers showing up during the war arc, which will be happening right after the season. So yeah. There's a lot to it, and we'll talk more about it as things get closer. But the other 3 quirks, right? Yes, the other 3 quirks that are going to be in there. Currently, we don't know what these are, but I will tell you what I think they are. First off, we have Black-Haired Kid, who is in between, who is the user between Banjo and Nanashimura. He's in the actual show. He's actually shown between Banjo and Toshinori, but his quirk, I still want to say that his quirk is more than likely size manipulation. It's honestly a bit of a weird quirk, but I think that that might actually be what it is. I can't say for sure, and I'm not 100% certain if that is actually the case, but we'll find out before too long. There's also other possibilities. As for the second and third users, not really certain which one has which, but one of them for sure has the ability to heal. Some healing quirk, be it healing quirks or just healing in general. Both of that quirk just feels like it's going to be important. The other one is probably the water-based quirk. There is some conflict there, and I don't want to get into all of that, but we'll definitely talk more about it as things go on. And basically, the way that you can actually determine what these quirks are is actually by looking in the first episode. But more specifically, by looking in the first manga. Because unlike the anime, which only shows 3 heroes, really. Well, I guess, or 4, I guess. Yeah. So we have the Fist guy, who is super strong. That's the basic quirk. That is one for all, and it's just normal self. Then we have Backdraft, who has a water-based quirk. Then we have Mount Lady, who has a water-based quirk, or not water-based quirk, size manipulation-based quirk. And then finally, we have Kamui Woods, who has a very similar quirk to Black Whip. I'm just saying. I've actually talked about it, and the possibility that more than likely there is a possibility that Banjo is actually frickin' Kamui Woods. I'm actually going to do that a theory about that again, because I think that that's actually still a high possibility, because I keep thinking he came out of Kamui came out of nowhere, but his quirk is so similar to Banjo. It's odd, and we'll talk about it, like I said, in a future video, so just hold tight. Now that we know that a certain someone is also a Nomu. Like I said, we'll talk about it later. Oh, there's a lot to that, and we're good. Like I said, we're going to talk about it before too long. Now, you may be wondering, what about float? What about that healing quirk? Well, the float part, or also, what about danger sense? Well, float is actually the one that is only in the manga. A certain hero shows up. This being a certain hero that is very, very important to Hatsume. Yeah. Basically the jetpack hero, which I'm forgetting what his name is, but he has a quirk. Doesn't necessarily have a quirk that is similar, but he does show up in the first frame of the manga, which leads me to think that maybe that scene is the actual thing that we should be paying attention to and not much else. By focusing on those heroes, we can actually determine that only 2 of these quirks would actually be different from that. It's honestly just a whole bunch of... It's probably just coincidence and stuff, but it would make a lot more sense than we may think. Also, these quirks are supposedly useless, but we'll talk about that in a future video, like I said. But we'll see what happens in the future going forward. But anyways, guys, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, please make sure to leave a like. Tell me your thoughts and theories down in the comments below. If you are going to leave a theory, make sure to say theory review somewhere in a comment. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and ring that notification bell, because it really helps out a lot more than you may think. Seriously, it really does. And of course, if you do want to support the channel even more, then definitely head down to the description and check out all of our links down there, including our social medias, our other 2 channels, and ways that you can support us financially, including our Patreon, which a big thank you to our current patron Sheeny, as well as check out our merch store, which should be adding some stuff soon, so yeah, look forward to that, as well as, of course, check out the book, which, again, all of those are linked down in the description below. But anyways, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, like I said, leave a like, and I will see you guys next time. But on!